The King is a recently released Netflix original movie that chronicles the rise of Henry V of England. Starring Timothée Chalamet as King Henry V, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Joel Edgerton as Sir John Falstaff. We follow Prince Hal as he becomes the notorious King Henry V, and we follow him through his battle at Agincourt. This is a very new release, and it kind of came out of nowhere, and as soon as I saw the trailer, I knew that it would be perfect to discuss for this channel. If you enjoy discussions and reviews on historical content, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button down below. Also hit the notification bell so that you know when I do upload. I really appreciate your patience. I had to fix a few things on my laptop to be able to edit and upload a video. My name is Rose King, and this is the Tudor Rose. The King is a relatively new release for Netflix. Netflix has definitely started to get into more historical content, including their recent movie on Robert the Bruce. This time they follow Prince Hal, who eventually becomes King Henry V. King Henry V is one of the most famous kings in England. I knew immediately that it was about Henry V when I saw the trailer because we see the character known as Sir John Falstaff. Sir John Falstaff is a character that is depicted in 3 of Shakespeare's plays. He is this sort of like bumbling character that is very famous, and I was actually kind of curious, this is a side note, I was kind of curious if Falstaff actually ever existed, so I googled it, and Google tells us Sir John Falstaff is a fictional character who appears in 3 plays by William Shakespeare. In 2 of the Henry IV plays, he is a friend of Prince Hal, the man who becomes King Henry V. And then the final note is Falstaff is very fat. Falstaff is definitely depicted as sort of this holly jolly drunk Santa character, and he's also depicted as Hal's father figure because, as we learn in this movie, Prince Hal and King Henry IV of England do not get along. Honestly, Henry IV doesn't get along with many people. I don't want to give too much away, even though, you know, history is just a Google click away, but I think that this is worth a watch. Spoiler alert. But I just want to talk about the pros and the cons of the movie. I would say that this is overall a very well put together movie. It is incredibly serious, which is both a pro and a con in my opinion. There's virtually no comedic relief. We open with Prince Hal, who is very famous for being sort of like this playboy, sort of doesn't want to do his job, sort of prince, and we see him become the king, and there's no, not life in it, but it's very gray. Not gray toned, but like gray in mood. So if you're not someone who really enjoys like salt of the earth dramas, you probably won't like this movie. I actually really love salt of the earth, super serious, dramatic historical dramas. I feel like there hasn't been a lot of those lately because I think people find them rather like downers. I personally really love when stories are super serious, especially for a relatively serious character that is King Henry V. I think that the actor who plays Henry V does a fantastic job. As Prince Hal, he's gorgeous. Like, if I were a teenager, my heart would just be aflutter for that guy. And that's really what Prince Hal is supposed to be, is this very sort of ladies' man type of character. And then as soon as he becomes Henry V, he takes his role very seriously. He takes himself to France. He defeats the French at the Battle of Agincourt. It's a very famous battle. I assume that if you were watching this kind of channel, you may at least have heard of the Battle of Agincourt. But I'm not going to say how it happens and everything because it is very heavily in this movie. This movie is gritty. It gets down to the dirty parts without hesitation. A lot of historical dramas will sort of like fluff a lot of things because, well, war sucks and it's hard to look at, but the King does not shy away from showing things. And there is this overwhelming theme throughout the movie of why people go to war. And it sort of poses the question of, is there ever a good reason to go to war? Is there ever a truly noble reason to go to war? It's suggested that some people just go because they feel like it, some people go for the glory of it. There's even a question posed that maybe some people make war in order to gain peace. And we see all of these different facets. Some people go to war because they feel wronged. Some people go to war because they don't know what else to do. Henry V in this movie is depicted as somebody who is trying his best to only go to war because it's necessary, and he's confronted a lot and deals a lot with, is it ever necessary? Henry V in this movie is depicted as a somewhat logical man, someone who's actually pretty passive but has a temper and has those moments of clarity where he kind of does what needs to be done. And he's definitely depicted as a king who is willing to do what he needs to do to protect his people. Overall, the performances in this movie are fantastic. I have to talk about Robert Pattinson. He's the best in this movie. I was so shocked. Like, I saw him in the cast and I was like, oh God. I haven't seen a lot of Robert Pattinson movies beyond the first Twilight movie and Harry Potter. And I think I've seen the one where he ends up at the end, it turns out that he's in one of the two towers on 9/11. I can't remember that movie. But he plays the Dauphin of France, or the prince who's going to become king in France. He knocks it out of the park. He's the best part of this movie. I was so shocked. If there is any comedic relief, he's the one really to give it. But it's not even funny, it's disturbing. He definitely represents the person who is going to war because he's a brat and doesn't have anything else to do, and he just thinks that he's so great and he's just going to go kill everybody because that he's the Dauphin and that's what he does. He is so slimy and gross, and just Robert Pattinson, man, he really did something with this role. It actually makes me want to watch more Robert Pattinson movies and makes me wish that he maybe got more roles, and it makes me very sad that he's so bogged down. And even I had misconceptions about him because of some vampire movies that he did. But he truly was the best performance in the entire movie. The one thing that I will say is that I believe that you would pronounce it Timothy, who plays Henry V, sometimes can seem a little bored. He's a very serious character, and I think that sometimes a lot of actors, when they're playing a serious character, sometimes it reads as bored. But he did a very good job. I thought that he had the character down. I do wish that they had established Prince Hal a little more from Henry V. There's very little differentiation between the two beyond one scene in the very beginning where you see him with like a habit on and he's drinking and laughing with Falstaff, and I really wish that they had spent more time separating the fun-loving Hal from the very serious king. I wish that they had shown that Henry V was someone who knew how to have a good time and who knew how to avoid responsibility. We do see a little bit of Johnny Depp's daughter. I think she's Lily Rose Depp. She plays Catherine, who eventually becomes Henry V's wife. I don't know what it is about Henrys and Catherines in England. They're just, everybody's named Henry and Catherine from like the 1200s until like the 1800s. Everybody is Henry and Catherine. And she's really only in the movie for a few minutes towards the end, and I thought that she actually did a really good job. From what I think that she is French. Like, she actually, I know that her mother is French, but I think that she grew up in France, and she definitely, in the short time that she's on screen, she leaves an impression, which is very nice. We definitely get an idea of where their relationship may eventually go, and I'm excited to see her in more things. Overall, I think that if you are a history fan, I think that you would enjoy this movie. You do have to enjoy very serious, dramatic, historical dramas. I think if you're a Henry V fan, I think that you're going to love this. It definitely gives Henry V that sort of glorious image, but making it very real and kind of bringing it more down to earth, and maybe presenting new layers beyond the here's our glorious king who beat people. Overall, I think that The King was very well done. I like it so much better than the movie that they did about Robert the Bruce. This felt like a movie that could have gone to the theaters and done very well. And I think that Netflix, when they get it right, they really get it right. And this is one movie that they did get it right, in my opinion. So overall, I did like The King, and I think that you should give it a watch. I know that this is a little vague, but because it's such a new movie, I don't want to give you a ton of details on the plot or really what happens, because even if you do know what happens with Henry V, I feel like he is maybe somebody who's going to make a resurgence in popularity soon, especially with this type of movie coming out. So I want people to enjoy his story. Maybe it's the first time that they're going to be hearing it, but if you have any interest in especially English history, he's a great king to check out. If you like Tudor history, like I love Tudor history, it's always interesting to go, like, I say 100 years after and 100 years before the Tudors, which Henry V would fall into. He is a very interesting person to look at in history, and I do encourage you to watch this movie. So that was my review and discussion on Netflix The King. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Make sure that you share this video with any history lovers in your life. And my name is Rose King. This was the Tudor Rose, and I will see you in the next video.